Um, let me give his bio.
No.
Aaron is a certified John Maxwell coach and speaker. But anyway, he's been doing this for a while, so the experience that he brings is going to be quite useful, and I think it's going to be quite helpful for each and every one of us. It's important to engage people, and there are tips and tricks to doing that. So, and Aaron is a master of that. So I'm going to hand over to him right now, and we'll go ahead and start.
All right. Thanks for that. I believe everyone can hear me very well. So I'm logged in twice. Because my laptop has been playing tricks all day. I'm shutting down at a weird moment. So just in case, I have my phone ready to continue on there. Welcome, everybody. I don't know what we call this, training. It's training here. And the whole idea is for us as a group, to improve on our communication, be it leading prayers, speaking on Sunday, giving announcements, or speaking in midweek. It's just to help each and every one of us improve in how we communicate, how we speak. So I've pulled out, hopefully I can do this in 30 minutes. I've pulled out, just taking some of the notes from my trainings with John Maxwell, and hopefully I can share a few things. I just hope I can do this. So I've titled this, I would encourage everybody to make notes, be it on your notepads or notebook or something, because we will be expecting over these 4 weeks, as the fellow leaders also start to, everyone is going to be speaking on something different. We would love to begin to see some of these things we're talking about incorporated in how you lead prayers, in how you begin to speak. Just let's take some of these notes and begin to act on those things. Yeah. So I've titled today's session. I don't normally like this video. I've titled today's session Mastering Communication, and we're going to be looking at engaging and connecting with your audience, be it a virtual audience or be it a live in-person audience. It's important to know how to engage and connect with your audience. Yeah. And in today's training, I'm hopeful that we would explore, number one, the power of words in communication, the art of simplicity, the importance of understanding and connecting with your audience. Okay, so let's start. And I need some engagement as much as possible. I may not spend so much time in it, but I'm looking at the chat, just in case there are things I may need to speak to immediately. So one of the things I do a lot is I pay close attention to quotes. I pick a lot. I literally have a note section on my phone where I collect quotes, and I pay close attention to great communicators and what they have to say about communication. So here are a few of my favorite quotes that I went in to pick up for this session, and I hope they would inspire. They should be clear enough. I hope they would inspire us as we encourage each and everyone to begin to develop in this area of effective speaking. A guy called Joseph Priestley said, the more elaborate our means of communication, the less we communicate. I'll say that again. The more elaborate our means of communication, the less we communicate. Joseph Priestley. The more elaborate our means of communication, the less we communicate. I'm repeating it just so that if you're writing, you can get it. So the first quote I have here, the more elaborate our means of communication, the less we communicate. The second one says, speak clearly. This is by a guy called Oliver Wendell. He says, speak clearly if you speak at all. Have every word before you let it fall. Speak clearly if you speak at all. Carve every word before you let it fall. Say that again. Speak clearly if you speak at all. Carve every word before you let it fall. Another quote says, half the world is composed of people who have something to say and can't. Half the world is composed of people who have something to say and can't, and the other half who have nothing to say and keep on saying it. Robert Frost. Half the world is composed of people who have something to say and can't, and the other half who have nothing to say and keep on saying it. Quote by Robert Frost. The ability, another quote, the ability to simplify means to eliminate the unnecessary so that the necessary may speak. Hans Hoffman. We're recording this anyway, so you can get all these quotes, hopefully. The ability to simplify means to eliminate the unnecessary so that the necessary may speak. Hans Hoffman. William Shakespeare says, brevity is the soul of wit. Brevity is the soul of wit. Now, another quote here says, good communication is just as stimulating as black coffee, for those of you who like coffee, people like Ayo, and just as hard to sleep after. Good communication is just as stimulating as black coffee and just as hard to sleep after. Stephen Covey, we all know him from the book on habits, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He says, in the last analysis, what we are communicates far more eloquently than anything we say or do. What we are communicates far more eloquently than anything we say or do. James Hume says, the art of communication is the language of leadership. You want to grow in your leadership, one of those areas we have to grow in is in our communication. The art of communication is the language of leadership. I'm going to rush through this quickly. Another says the art of effective listening is essential to clear communication, and clear communication is necessary to management success. Another quote, if you can't write your message in a sentence, you can't say it in an hour. This one is very key. If you can't write your message, if you can't write your prayer points, if you can't write your speech in a sentence, you can't say it in an hour. Diana Buha. There are always 3 speeches. This happens to me all the time. There are always 3 speeches for everyone. There are always 3 speeches for everyone you actually gave, the one you practiced, the one you gave, and the one you wish you gave. Yeah. There are always 3 speeches for everyone you actually gave, the one you practiced, that's one, the one you gave, and the one you wish you gave. Dale Carnegie. Another quote says, one of the best ways to persuade others is with your ears, by listening to them. So before you prepare for prayer meetings, before you come on to speak during the weeks and all that, are you listening? One of the best ways to persuade others. I had a very good time with the Teens Church yesterday. And one of the best ways to persuade others is by listening to them. The last 2 quickly. Make sure, please take this. Make sure you have stopped speaking before your audience has stopped listening. Dorothy Sanoff. Make sure you stop speaking before your audience has stopped listening. And the last quote, it says, be sincere. This is by Franklin D. Roosevelt. Be sincere, be brief, be seated. All right, let me jump past this. Let me go to the next. So let me pick one of the quotes. Instructions for making a speech, for preparing whatever. It says, be sincere, be brief, be seated. Now, number 1 note for us this evening. In communication, please write this down. In communication, speaking over time is a crime. Speaking over time is a crime. Say it sooner. Speaking over time is a crime. So say it sooner. So let me preface this with a story that John Maxwell told us a while ago. There's a guy called Mark Twain, and it's actually on the internet. Mark Twain once attended a church service, during which the person who was speaking, the missionary, had passionately appealed for donations, right, that would aid the community's poor. This appeal had so stirred Mark Twain that he could hardly wait for the offering plates to come his way. He had $400 in his pocket that he wanted to give, and he was so anxious to drop it in the plate and wanted to even borrow more to give. But you know what? The plate was so long in coming his way that the fever heat of beneficence was going down lower and lower, going down at the rate of $100 a minute. The plate was passed too late. When it finally came to him, he said, my enthusiasm had gone down so much that I kept my $400 and stole a dime from the plate. So you see, sometimes leads to crime. Many of us are waiting you want to learn something, you want to say something. You're better off saying it sooner. You want people to understand quickly what you're trying to say. In this case, that preacher who kept on saying, even though he had persuaded Mark Twain, but he now proceeded to keep on talking and still trying to elaborate his point, that eventually he nullified the appeal of his message. What's the moral of the story? Be brief. And that's something we're trying as much as possible to be very effective at TH. Be brief. What you can't say in 1 hour, if you need 1 hour to convince somebody, there's going to be so many inconsistencies in that. So we're hoping and being hopeful that we can be people who can learn quickly, to be brief, to be able to get to the point of what we're trying to say, be it as you lead prayers, be it as you're preparing for announcements, be it as you deliver midweek services or Sunday services. With the moral of the story is for us to be brief. Number two note, because of time. Number two note, in communication, complexity is creepy. Complexity is creepy. Unless you have the gift and intelligence of the likes of Pastor Laulu. Say it simpler. Complexity is creepy. Say it simpler. When communicators try to say too much, one thing Pastor Laulu does very well is he takes very complex points and drops them in very simple ways for you to understand. When communicators try to say too much, you know what? They take away from their main idea. Too many points, too many principles begin to muddy the message. So if you're leading prayers, you want to pick 1-2 points that this is going to be the focus for today. This is what I want the people who are listening to me to get from today. This is the focus, right? Too many points, too many principles begin to muddy the messages. Communicators, we need to adjust our volume, and it's not by raising our voices, but by cutting back on the amount of content that we want to put in. Because you know what? Our words purchase the most when spent sparingly. Number 3 notes quickly, because of time. Is this helping? Is this helping? Is this making any sense? I know people may be moving around, but is this helping and is it making any sense? Thank you. In communication, number 3, communication. Audience are forgetful. Please remember this. Your audiences, be it on the prayer call, be it in church on Sunday, be it the audience are forgetful. So you want to say things in such a way that it will stick. Audience are forgetful. The audiences are forgetful. You have to land it in such a way that it will stick. Now, it is said that great speakers communicate memorable messages that stick in the minds of the audiences. We don't have the luxury of time. I would have explained in speaking school at the John Maxwell, they literally would analyze for us how many jokes or how much content really John Maxwell shared in a speech. So you want to say things that it will stick. Don't be lazy at merely sharing information. You and I, be it that we're leading on the prayer calls or leading on Sunday or speaking during the week, put in the energy and effort to say things in an interesting way. You have to put in the effort to say things in an interesting way. In an interesting way. You have to do the research. Look for catchy slogans that the audience can quickly latch onto and easily recall. Doesn't even matter if it's a prayer call. That's why everybody's on NSPPD. What's the slogan? Somebody help me. What God cannot do does not exist, right? Anybody, right? Catchy slogans. Catchy slogans. You have to be able to find interesting ways to put those things in your presentations. Call catchy slogans that the audience can quickly latch onto and easily recall. You know, you want to find shocking statements or statistics. Pastor Laulu does that very well. Statistics to lower your predictability. And you know what it does? It piques the interest of your listeners. On that point still, you want to craft your speech in a way that connects with the wants of the audience. Consistently, your speech, your prayer leading, your announcement taking, your speaking on Wednesdays or wherever, even outside TH. You always want to think about the audience and craft your speech in such a way that connects with the audience. You know what? Because people will perk up, they will pay attention when they hear something that addresses their deeply felt needs. So don't treat it as, oh, I'm just leading prayers. No. Can you sense what the needs of the people you are going to be speaking to? What am I trying to communicate to them today? Right? The first step in getting results through your communication is knowing and connecting with your audience. Please write that down. Knowing and connecting with your audience. Very key, very key. This week, we had the lady who led praise and worship on Sunday. By the time she sent me her songs on Wednesday, I said, no, that's not going to connect with the audience. It took me 3-4 days to try and communicate our type of audience to her. You have to know your audience. You have to know. In fact, she said something. She went ahead. It worked eventually. She led a song on Sunday, and I told her that song may not work, right? She said, no, but everybody should know it. I said, no, it's not about everybody knowing it. You need to understand the audience that you're before, right? The first step in getting results through your communication is knowing and connecting with your audience. Yeah. And you know what? Many times, well, time's good. Many times we fall into the trap of trying to impress our audience rather than making sure that we are communicating, that what we're communicating is what will resonate with them. John Maxwell always taught us it always has to be about impact over impress. Impact over impress. Impact over impress. Impact would always trump impress any day, anytime, hands down. So you're leading prayers. How can I impact and not necessarily impress? Impact over impress. Listen, and take this. John Maxwell says this to us all the time. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. That caring has to come across whilst you lead prayers. That caring has to come across when you speak on Wednesdays. That caring has to come across when you speak on Sundays. That caring has to come across how we teach the teens church, how we teach the children's church. People don't care how much you know, how much information you have. People don't care about all that. What they are most interested is, do you care about me? So you have to treat your audience with care and come from that place of how much they need to walk away knowing that you gave me information that comes from the place of care. And one of the most common mistakes we make when trying to communicate is trying to impress the person, trying to impress the people that we're speaking to. Listen, I've done it. We have all done it. You know, and the reasoning behind it is if I want to show them how much I know. And God always humbles me all the time, every time I speak, because half of the time I wouldn't be able to even say most of the things I prepared. So it's about impact. If I show them how much I know, maybe they will like me. Maybe they will accept me. Maybe they will listen to me. Maybe they will do what I want. It doesn't work like that. Impact. Impact. Always think about impact and not impressing people. So why does impress not work? Especially based on that quote. No one cares. No one cares. People want to know how much you care for them, not how much you impress them. Your audience is not asking themselves, do you know more than me? No, they're asking themselves, do you care about me? Do you care about me? In the way we led prayers, do we care about the people? How much of that was communicated in the way we led prayers? How much of that was communicated in the way we took the announcement? How much of that was communicated in the way we spoke? You know, I walked to the teens church on Sunday, and one of the feedbacks that came in there, one of the feedback that came from the teens was, oh, they would like to have a picnic. So well, hang on a minute. We're having a picnic at the end of the month. And it dawned on me all of a sudden that, wow, we send the teens off, but they don't get the opportunity to hear announcements. So you see? So straight away, that's something with the leaders are going to take on board to make sure that the teens church also gets announcements. So it has to be more about caring, not what we have to tell them or what we have to tell people. Yeah. So how much care comes through when we lead prayers? How much care comes through when we speak? It's only when the audiences feels like they know, like, and trust you. Please keep these 3 words. Every time you show up to lead prayers, every time you show up to speak, you want to make sure you get people to that place where they know, like, and trust you, that you are interested in how you can help them and not in how much I know or how much you know. Okay. And even with that, it's still worth keeping in mind. Aristotle brilliantly alluded all those years. He says, we love to learn, but we hate to be taught. And John has said to us over the years, over and over, that people don't want to sit at your feet. This is what we used to do in our churches. People are not there to sit at your feet and worship you. No. They'll much rather be a fellow traveler. I want this conversation to feel like we're learning together. Yeah. All right, quickly. I want to jump into 5 things that would help us to get to understand and know our audiences. Then we'll go to Q&A quickly, if any. 5 questions to get to know your audience. And these are questions I have to ask myself every time before I prepare. Where are my audience coming from? When I went to Israel, the thinking in leading in Israel is different from how I lead in TH. When I'm in a purely white Caucasian environment, I lead differently. Even in TH, I still have to lead differently. I've led worship once and somebody walked out of the service because I said in church, because I said, hey, everybody stand up. And the person was offended. So, but I don't want to stand up. So you have to always think about your audience. Where are they coming from? What's their location? What's their position? What's their role? So you can't just come and lead prayers and say, oh, we're Nigerians. No, it's not like that. Oh, we live in the UK. No, you can't use an example that would work in a typical Nigerian environment with this audience. It doesn't work like that. Where are my audience coming from? Does that make sense? So you have to think about it that way. What's their location? What's their position? What type of people am I going to be speaking today? What's their perspective? As a church, what are we trying to create and how are we trying to create it? Number 2, what do they want? What are their goals? What are their desires? What do they need right now? I can have a revelation on the goodness of God, but most of the people in TH, example, most of the people in TH are probably just trying to break to the next level. So me sharing on the goodness of God is not about to help, may not be able to help people. What do the people need? So number 1, where are they coming from? Number 2, what do they want? What are their likely goals? What are their likely desires? What do they need right now? Spoken or unspoken? Spoken or unspoken? Number 3, are they expecting to hear from me? Are they likely to view me as an authority on the subject? And that will come out by the way you prepare for what you're talking about. Would they view me as an authority on the subject? Because of time. Number 4, how familiar are they with the subject? So that's why most times you have to find a way to give an intro. I always use myself as examples. There was a season where I led prayers for 3 weeks. You know, one of the feedback that came, even though the prayers were powerful and great, right? But one fundamental thing was missing. Even though I did it on the first week, but I still had to do it again. It was important to give some kind of context. Because yes, the prayers were powerful, but we were possibly losing some people in their connecting to that prayer, those prayers, right? Because they were not around when we gave the context. So some of the things I said the first week, I had to repeat it again to create a context based on the feedback we were getting. So don't just think that people should know. No, people don't know. How familiar are they with the subject? In fact, somebody walked up to me in that season when we're doing favor prayers and say, look, but I'm favored by God. I don't need to pray about favor again. You have to understand your environment. How familiar are they with the subject? Number 5, could they find your message uncomfortable or threatening? So even me as a praise and worship leader, I have to be careful. There's some places where I can say, everybody put your hands together, clap your hands. To some other people, it may be uncomfortable. So that lady who said to me that day, but I don't feel like standing up. So for her, she saw it as a command. She said, but I feel like sitting down. I don't want to stand up. And if I stand up like every other person, they will think I'm being disrespectful. So you have to think about those things in how you land what you have to say. Could they find your message uncomfortable or could they find it threatening? Is this helping? Is this helping? You might not be able to answer all of these with every audience, guys, but listen, the whole idea of these teachings is for us to start by demonstrating that we know something about our audience. It goes a long way in showing again, what's that word? That we care. And that care has to come out in how we speak, how we lead prayers, how we communicate with our people. All right? 5 more points, 5 tips on how to connect with your audience, and I'm done. 5 tips. So I just gave you how to know your audience. Now this is how to connect with your audience. Now, once you know your audience, or once you've tried to figure out your audience, these are 5 things that I think would help in meaningfully connecting with your audience. Establish some common ground. Establish some common ground, number 1. And it can be anything. It's whatever you want them to think. You want them to know that we're the same type of people. So your presentation has to have some kind of common ground, right? See, I've talked about a few things. What did I do? I talked more about myself in where I have failed, where I have made mistakes myself, where people have given me feedback, right? That's some common ground. And then you know what? Number 2, you need to always affirm your audience in an authentic way. Make people feel good about themselves. So if you ever hear me, you'll hear me talk about my love for bread and how much bread is a big issue for me. And I make a mess. I would intentionally always talk about my weight and things like that, because I want people to feel good about themselves. It's not them. What I'm trying to pass across may affect them, but I'm using myself as an example. Affirm them in an authentic way. Have fun with them. Number 3, have fun with your audience, even if it's prayers. If you're sharing a serious message, ensure there's an appropriate emotional connection. You know, tell your own stories. Sharing emotions through your own personal stories is always, Tony does this very well. You share your emotions through your own personal stories. Sister Blessing also does it very well in her leading prayers. Through your emotions, your own personal stories. That's such a great way to bond. The more powerful the emotion, the tighter the bond. The more powerful the emotion, the tighter the bond. Number 4, be vulnerable. I just talked about that. Be vulnerable. Many of us just come and will lead. Calm down. Be vulnerable. Because people are going through things. So let them also know that you're struggling to be disciplined. You know, be vulnerable. Share what you've learned from your mistakes. I've just done a lot of that even in this conversation. Share what you've learned from your mistake. This will get you a lot further than telling them about your impressive successes. Be vulnerable. Yeah. Last one. Talk to them like they are close friends. Talk to them like you're close friends. You know, and every one of us has work. Ayo does this effectively. Have a conversational tone. It's a great way to connect, to create, you know, just a conversational tone. Find a way, you know, and this used to happen to us in a lot of African churches. You know, it just feels like they're telling us. No, we need to find a conversational tone in how we do our presentations. Yeah, I'll stop here because of time. All right, you know, yeah, let's stop here just in case we have any more questions, and then we can take it from there. Hope that was helpful. So I'm going to go around. If you have questions, you can also ask at that point. I know you may not have heard everything, but what's the one thing that you've heard that you know you can work with right now in how you begin your presentations and things like that? Let me start with Tola. Tola.
Hello, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a lot to take away from there. I think the quotes and everything you said, the quotes you said were very, in a way, the quotes help say in some way the things that you said, really about, preparation is key, but be aware that what you want to say, you can say it, even though you said in a sentence, but I got the impression that, get to the point straight away, because that's how you draw your audience in and gain their attention. You might have a lot to say, but you run the risk of losing their engagement and they're listening before you actually get to the point. So I thought that was really, really useful, in delivery, amongst every other thing, but that was what caught my attention. Yeah.
Right, good stuff. Any questions?
I think in relation to questions, what I thought about was when you talked about impact versus impress. And I thought about it from the point of view of how does that, how do you prepare to impact without impressing at the same time? Or is it more from the view of the individuals?
Yeah, so the focus is not on impress. The focus is on impact. I'll give you an example. Quick example, because of time. Quick example. I went through a phase in my life. As a teenager where people were trying to get me to smoke. Yeah. And I came to the end of myself, went to my dad and said, Dad, people are trying to get me to smoke. Yeah. And my father said something to me that day. He said, if people are trying to get you to smoke, you must be keeping the wrong company. Okay, fine. Anyway, I got through that season of my life and pulled through. Then check this out. One day, I follow my father. He's going to preach somewhere. So many years later, I've gone to uni and come out. And my father is crying. They call him the crying preacher, by the way. So my father is crying and appealing to these people to give their lives to Christ, and goes ahead to tell them how he used to be a smoker. I'm like, what? He used to be a smoker? Right? So many things wrong there. He wasn't vulnerable even when I was with him. Now he picked a place to be vulnerable. Right? So he must, at the time when I came to him, he was trying to impress me, in quote, possibly trying to impress me, he didn't know any better, possibly trying to impress me that I must be somebody doing something wrong. People like him, like all of us, right? Our parents never came second or came last. When you're vulnerable, when you tell the truth, when you tell the truth, when you are sincere, you are impacting. So don't go and pick the 6 steps of da. But where are you in those 6 steps? Where's your own story? And the things that create impact is when people tell about themselves, when people tell their struggles. That's what creates impact. Your stories would always create more impact than trying to impress people with, oh, I know the 5 words, I know the 5 Hebrew words of koinonia.
Okay, so in essence, I get it that you're more impactful when you're vulnerable.
You tell your stories and when you're vulnerable.
And it's more your weaknesses or your struggles.
Yeah, when your connection to the story you're trying to tell them, you would impact people more than trying to impress them with your many words, your many Hebrew, your many this.
Thank you.
Or your many anointings. All right, let me go to Michael Eder.
I'm actually going to start with what you just mentioned in terms of your connection to the story that you're trying to tell. Yeah. I think that's going to be my quote, if anything, that I take away from today. Just going back to the first thing you mentioned in terms of knowing your audience. I don't know. I think I'm still trying to understand that perspective of, in order for you to be impactful, or in order for you to communicate with impact, do you have to know your audience? What does that mean?
So good question. So typically when I go out to speak, and I'll bring it back to the online audience, when I go out to speak, even when I go out to sing, I literally just walk through the audience. In fact, I'm so bad at this. When I go out with my team and they're looking for Aaron Tieran, I have one of my guys, Glenn, and I'll tell them that's Aaron Tieran. Why? I'm trying to deflect attention from it, because people will behave differently when they know it's Aaron Tieran. Even in church, I've had people who didn't know I was the Aaron Tieran. And when they know I'm the Aaron Tieran, they behave differently, right? It allows me to begin to have a sense of the people in the room. What type of people are in this room? Who am I sent here to? I would have loved to show you a message. I just came back from Israel. Somebody sent me a message today saying, oh my God, ever since I met you, have you been praying for me? I feel like you're covering me. Only God knows what I said to make that person feel like they could relate to me in that way. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? So even in online, you can ask questions. So you've been here for a while. What are the type of people that are on our calls? What are some of their struggles? What are some of the things that people go through? What are some of those things through conversation that you have heard? That's how you prepare for your audience. Now, again, some of the things we talked about today is not just only for the church. It would help you even with work and all that. What you do it at work. When you know that you have senior stakeholders, you prepare differently, right? Michael, yes. Same thing. So depending on the type of people that are going to be in the room, you have to prepare for them you have to know your audience so that you're able to speak to them based on the type of people in that room. But because what we do is also spiritual, you want to, even from a spiritual perspective, be able to feel their pain, be able to feel their needs so that I can reach them that way. Does that make sense? Does that help?
Yes, it does. So let me just, sorry, everyone, let me just play that back. So in terms of, so are we talking about, when we say know our audience, so let's use the TH congregation as a case study in this instance. So obviously we know that we are a mixed group in terms of ethnicity. You also have people with families, people that are single, people in, is that what we're trying to talk about in terms of knowing your audience?
All that's included. Where are they spiritually? What type of people do you have? Like in TH, we have people who've been pastors before, right? So we have to even be careful how we deliver the word such that they don't feel like, hey, we're only trying to reach people. Do you understand? So you literally need to get all kinds of information as much as possible about the people you're going to be speaking to. Okay. You have people who've been hot and where they've been before. So it's not just children. There was a day I was teaching in church, and the children's church couldn't go because their teachers were not available. Trust me, that day was one of the most difficult teaching sessions I've had, because I knew there were things in my text that I could not say because children were in the hall.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So the moment the children had to stay in the hall, I literally was working overtime in the things I was saying, because some of those things, some of the examples I knew I'd prepared, I knew would not land well with children in the hall.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry,
so,
one more thing.
Go on.
So obviously, a lot of the engagements that we have are based on spiritual matters. Now, if we are, either preparing for midweek service, lead prayers on a Monday, or even anything that we have to do on the main Sunday service, the expectation is that we put it to God in prayer and that we are led by the Holy Spirit. Where does the direction of the Holy Spirit come into this? So I know there's two questions.
So I take so we lead them with compassion. So the leaders of your church, we gather every Saturday morning to pray for the church. So I want a word from God that is going to minister to the people. I don't want them to see me. I want them to get something. So I go to the Holy Spirit from that place of compassion. What would you have me say to your people today? Does that make sense? So I'm not trying to impress the people. Sweet Spirit of God, this is how I pray. What's the prayer point for today? What are the songs for today? Ayo will tell you I battle a lot with him with songs when he's asking for songs, because I'm still in the questioning. I can just come and drop songs. No, but there are songs that God has intentional for this service. There is a word that God has intentional for this service. I have a series that I've been wanting to do in TH. And every time I've wanted to do that series, almost ready, I've never felt a lead that it was time for it. So what I think, so that's how I'm working with the Holy Spirit on that, right? So does that make sense, Michael? So I have to also go to the Holy Spirit with compassion for the people. The people are more important, not what I have to say. And the Holy Spirit is more important to what he wants to say to the people through me. Does that help?
Yes, it does, totally.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
Let's go to someone else. Tim Dial. Timmy Dial.
She's on the train, so she's
all right. Okay, she's on the train. Okay, cool. I can't speak. Yeah. Bibo.
Because good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
You're quite faint. So what's a highlight for you? And then if you have any questions, you can then ask.
Just the highlight, impact, impress, impact people more, don't focus on impression. Of what Michael Ever just said about knowing your audience and knowing how to communicate, knowing your audience and knowing how to communicate with them. And another thing you said was being able to explain yourself in one sentence and express, whatever it is that you can write in a sentence, you should be able to explain it in an hour or vice versa. Those are the key things. There are so many more I could list out, but yeah,
all right, cool.
I don't have any questions.
All right, cool. All right, we've got another 5 minutes because of prayers. Toyin? Timmy says highlight for how I was knowing the audience and affirming them authentically, yeah?
If I say what was in my mind, you say I'm copying everybody, but it's the same thing, understanding your audience.
You're not copying everybody, you said it to your way.
I don't understand if you can say something in one sentence, then you can. I don't understand you have to be literal. I don't understand metaphors. So please explain that a bit more, because I don't get it.
Because of time, let me come back to you. Let me come back to you because of time. All right. So that's your question. So I'll come back to you on that. Alan?
Hi, good evening, everyone. I think the part that spoke to me was impact over impress. Way back, whenever you're given an opportunity to speak, you started from university days. Sometimes you try to justify to the people why you have been selected amongst the thousands of students to come and lead, say, morning devotion, for example, by trying to impress them, you quote as many scriptures as Adebo you can manage in like 2 minutes, and you walk out of there feeling like you're a superstar, but there's probably no impact after that meeting. So for me, impact and not impress is the highlight of today's message. No questions. Thank you.
All right, cool. Dr. Ade, Dr. Dotson. Dr. Dotson.
One of the things that really struck me was about simplicity, learning to be brief.
Oh, wow, you switched stuff. All right, cool. Because of time, because of prayers, I hope this has been helpful. This will continue over the next 4 weeks. Sister Yemi, are you able to speak? Sorry, I missed you, Sister Yemi.
No, I think everyone said the highlight for me was brevity. Sometimes when you want to communicate, you're, perhaps thinking of elaborate words instead of just, so that for me resonated. I think I share Toyin and Michael's I guess it's a bit of confusion. I think I understand the point. I think it's more that it's, to some degree, you need to know your audience, but I think ultimately it's about being led by the Spirit of God, because you can know your audience or think you know your audience and preach a message, based on your knowledge that is far removed from, what God actually wants for the audience. So I guess but I think I understand it. I think it's just more having a general sense, but when it boils down to it being led by the Spirit of God, which sounds spiritual, but is actually important, because that's why we're Christians after all. So that's it for me.
Okay, cool. Aya.
Yeah, sorry. Thanks, Tayemi. I was just going to say that the whole point about knowing your audience is not only about the physical alone, but it's also about the spiritual aspect of it. Mm-hmm. So because you can see somebody who's well dressed, who is everything on the facial looks, everything's all right with them, and then the Holy Spirit just ministers through you to say blah blah blah. This is their problem. So it encompasses it has to do with trusting the Holy Spirit to speak through you into people's situation as well. But there are certain things that help. The way, and because we're all from Nigeria, my parents are pastors in CAC. So we've done crusades to places where, in fact, I've traveled to a never reached part of town before. When we went there and I had to speak as a youngster, I didn't try to approach it the way I would approach speaking to university students, because it's a completely different audience. They won't understand statistics. They won't understand some examples because it's a different audience. I had to come down to their level and allow the Holy Spirit to speak through me. So there are some basic guidelines that from a natural point of view you can do. And also, that's also why you have to trust the Holy Spirit, because I can't tell you how many times I've approached something, gotten somewhere, even online. You start a meeting and you just feel the Holy Spirit telling you, move in another direction. Or you have a message, you get in front of people, you start preaching, and God because of the people that you're in front, you have to just, but the worst thing that can happen is for you to be totally unaware. And I know this is more difficult online, but to be totally unaware of the audience you're speaking to, so that you are speaking and they're not receiving, and you're not aware early enough to be able to make a switch. Or maybe the Holy Spirit is trying to impress on your heart and you're not flexible enough to be able to switch around the message. I think that could become a problem.
Now,
Thank you.
In addition to that, the preparation is key. I've had, and happened to pretty much all of us, the level of your preparation would also help you know when you get into an audience that you were not expecting or whatever, if you have prepared appropriately and given enough time in your preparation, it would also come out in how you begin to switch at those points. Yeah? Now, because of prayers, we need to go. All right, Lan, over to you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Aaron, and thanks everyone for being on here and for all the questions. I think what Aaron shared is so powerful and very refreshing as well. If I'm to sum up some of the things that he said, I'll use one of the parables that Jesus gave in Luke chapter 11. And in Luke chapter 11, Jesus gave a parable about a man that went to his friend in the night and said to his friend that, please give me bread, because another friend of mine has met me in his journey and I have nothing to set before him. And I think that does encapsulate everything that Aaron has said tonight, because we need to know who we are speaking to. We need to know what they need. And then we need to get that thing that they need and deliver it to them. So whether we have to get it intellectually, whether we have to get it spiritually, we have to get it. And for us as Christians, I think that's where the balance is. We need to know on an intellectual level or a physical level, but we also need to know on a spiritual level. So when we find out what the need is, physically, we go to God and say, this person has this need. This is what I know, but does what I know does what I know hold enough to help them? And that's where we get the help from God to help them in that scenario as well. But so go ahead and read Luke 11 for that parable, and you'll be able to tie up a lot of that with what Aaron has said tonight. Thank you so much, Aaron, for sharing these nuggets with us as well. And thank you all for being on the call. Do you have a